So I think sometimes when you're young, it's difficult to listen to your intuition. It's difficult to listen to your inner voice when there's a lot of people around you who are also successful in their own right, but that's not your journey. It's really listening to what you want to do. We all are also kind of nursing the child in ourselves. All those childhood inclinations, like me cutting up my clothes, me having interest in these things, are what the older me is still the most passionate about. So sometimes it's really being able to turn into yourself and ignore some of the noise and being able to decipher what's really for you and who's really in support of you. And sometimes that comes in forms that you may not think that they come in.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Bounceback. My name is Coach Cecily, and I'm a Bounceback coach. And this is Chinasa's Cocoon. The title of my podcast is called Beyond the Bounceback, How Setbacks Unleash the Inner Visionary. And I'm super excited to have yet another beautiful alum of Syracuse University with me. So please introduce yourself, tell us the year you graduated and what you do today.
Sure. So my name is Syreeta Herbert. Some people may know me as Syreeta C. I graduated from Syracuse University in 2011, and I'm currently a fashion designer and seamstress.
I love that. Can you describe a pivotal moment during your Syracuse years that significantly impacted your trajectory, right? So a pivotal moment that had an impact. What were the circumstances surrounding it, and how did it make you feel at the time?
Sure. So I would say that most of my pivotal moments at Syracuse University actually came before fully applying there or fully starting my freshman year. I was lucky to have the opportunity to also do summer college for high school students, which is a great program that Syracuse offers prior to applying there when you're still a high school student.
What's the name of that program?
Summer college for high school students.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was actually, I would say several of my fellow alum and peers that I actually met at Syracuse, and that was prior to my junior year in high school, where my parents were allowed me to attend that program. And a little bit of backstory on me, I'm originally from the DC area, but I went to PG County Public School, and I went to a high school called Eleanor Roosevelt, where I essentially had to have a major in high school in order to graduate, and that was actually in science and technology. And so back then, I actually thought I wanted to be pre-med. And PG County Public School, and on that track that I was on, I didn't really have a lot of opportunity to practice or even dabble in fashion design at all, but I was always cutting up my clothes. I was always finding a way to present myself and use fashion as a way to express my autonomy, to express body positivity, and to really just engage with the world around me. I was a very timid kid, but I really used fashion to sort of develop my self-efficacy, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah, so in high school, after being on a science track for 2 years and some change, I really decided that I wanted to dabble a little bit deeper into fashion and how that could be something that's sustainable for me, or it's how something I can practice on a more formal level. And so my parents allowed me to do summer college. And it's a 6-week intense course. You get college credit for it, so I could apply that to my credits once I actually applied and was accepted. And I decided to do that in the fashion design program. And it's probably actually, I called my mom the second day, and I was like, I'm not going to be a doctor anymore. This is it. And it's the actual faculty that are your year-round faculty at Syracuse that taught me in that course. So I also really fell in love with the professors. I fell in love with the programming and with the campus, and I really got a chance to develop an idea for what it would mean to attend college and attend college at a major university, but also do an art and design track. And I really fell in love with that sort of well-roundedness. So that was my trigger or my catalyst, if you will, to propel myself just into a formal track for what I wanted to study and do with the rest of my life at all. So I would say without summer college to begin with, I probably wouldn't be who I am today. But however, when I actually went to apply around 2007, the graduating year of 2007 was the final year that Syracuse allowed incoming freshmen to not be able to submit a formalized art portfolio, which was something that you submit in order to go to usually a visual and performing arts school of any type. And so because I was doing a science and tech track in high school, I didn't have an art portfolio for real. So when it came time for me to apply, I was accepted, but I was accepted into general population, into arts and sciences. So I had to reach back out to Syracuse, into the offices, and really sort of, I don't want to say plead my case, but for lack of a better way, say, you know, this is something that I really, really want to do. They only accepted, I want to say, between 18 and 20 fashion designers in that programming for that year. So my graduating class was half the size maybe of a usual graduating class for the fashion designer curriculum. But they accepted my plea, and I was able to go back to Syracuse, let's say, for schooling and really finish out my career. And then when I was there, I did pick up a minor and a concentration and some other things, but Syracuse really did allow me to sort of lay the groundwork for how I wanted to hybridize what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Wow, that's an incredible story. So I have to ask you, when you told your mom that you were pivoting away from medicine towards fashion, was she supportive?
You know, you might have to ask her. She was probably like, what? But also in some ways not surprised.
Right.
I grew up cutting up my clothes.
Okay.
I grew up figuring these things out.
The clues
I was
were
as
there.
much studious as I was explorative.
Okay.
When it came to clothing, I would cut up stuff to make Barbie clothes. I would cut up stuff to make Cabbage Patch Kid clothes. I would cut up stuff to wear to school. She would be like, we just bought that? So why you cutting that?
Exactly.
But I never stopped. And I said, I still do the same thing today. I just know how to do it a little bit better.
Okay.
So I think my mom also sort of recognized that I was always ambitious. I was always very committed. And once I made a decision, I'm going to see it through. So even my application process to Syracuse, it was very much so me doing it and then bringing it to my parents and saying, this is the thing.
Okay.
Summer college, it was a program that I found for myself. And I said, hey, this is what I want to do. And they knew by the time I came to them with these ideas or these prompts, I was really decisive about it.
Sure.
And so they were willing to support that.
I love
which
that.
I'm grateful for.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so much easier when you have the support of your loved ones. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've pivoted, but now they have changed the way, I guess, you gain entrance into the program. There's a limited number. You have to go in as a general education student, right? You have to go the general ed track.
They were able to fix it, re-envision
Understood.
it by the time, so I could start with my fellow class in the
okay.
fashion design program.
But you had to be resilient. You had you had to speak up for yourself.
Yeah, I had to say, I had to advocate for myself and say, you know, I'm glad I got in. This is my number one school, but this is a program that I'm really, really passionate about, and I would prefer for you to take one more.
One more. I don't need 2 seats, just one.
Just one.
Yes. Okay, and so it sounds like you found your voice within that. Were there any other gems within your, you know, your soul maybe that was unearthed, right? Any other gems? Any other characteristics that you found out about yourself as a result of you having to speak up for yourself and advocate, this is what I want. Thank you for that, but this is what I want.
You know, it's a very interesting question because I never thought about that. But I truly did grow up as an incredibly timid kid. I'm very quiet. I never really, you know, had the confidence to approach people. And that was probably the first time in my life where I really said, you know, thanks, but... You know, thanks, but there's a but.
Yes.
I grew up, just a tiny bit of a backstory. Me, I also grew up with a hearing impairment. I suffered sudden sensory neural hearing loss when I was in 2nd grade, and I've had another bout with it since then. So I grew up very much so to myself, very much so quiet, kind of in a corner. And I wasn't a person who pushed back. I wasn't a rule breaker. I wasn't a rebel, whether it was with a cause or without a cause. I was very much like, this is what someone told me to do, so this is what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Even being on a science or a medical track, being from the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, that was just like, okay, that's what people do. That's what people are good at. There's no one in my family who is an artist in a professional sense, and there's definitely no one in my family who's also an entrepreneur. So it was really that first experience at Syracuse, having to say, this is something that I would prefer to take on in a different light than the opportunity that you've given me, was probably the first stepping stone into the person that people know Syreeta to be today, where I can say, thanks for that, but this is what I would prefer to do.
I love that.
Even when I was at Syracuse, and I loved the fashion program, and I think I was a year and one semester in, and I was like, this is a lot of art. And so I ended up picking a minor in entrepreneurship, and that minor in entrepreneurship catapulted me into being able to have the foundation to start my own business currently, because prior to that, I thought, I moved to New York City, I'd work corporate, I did intern in New York City and on Fashion Ave, and I did the tents, and I did New York Fashion Week, and I did that whole spiel, and really kind of realized corporate is corporate no matter where you go. And I picked up an entrepreneurship minor, and that really gave me the precedent to be able to start my own business when I realized that corporate and working in New York City probably wasn't going to be for me either. And if I had gone to, potentially just a fashion school, like a FIT or FIDM or a SCAD, I may not have necessarily had the landscape, the academic landscape, to also be add to my repertoire, to be able to do that. And that was one of the big reasons why I chose Syracuse in the beginning. I wanted to be around people who weren't like me, but I also wanted to have the opportunity to pivot, if so be it.
I love that. And so I want to go back to something that you said a little while ago. If people were to describe Syreeta today, what do you think would be the one word that they would use to describe you?
Passionate.
Got it.
Passionate is probably
That's what I would have chosen. And so, given your experience, your pivots, your finding of your voice, you're needing to say thank you for that opportunity, however, but what advice would you give to a student who might be facing the similar challenges that you face, or a similar challenge that you face? They might be facing it today.
So I think sometimes when you're young, it's difficult to listen to your intuition. It's difficult to listen to your inner voice when there's a lot of people around you who are also successful in their own right, but that's not your journey. It's really listening to what you want to do. It's, we all are also kind of nursing the child in ourselves, all those childhood inclinations, like me cutting up my clothes, me having interest in these things, are what the older me is still the most passionate about. So sometimes it's really being able to turn into yourself and ignore some of the noise, and being able to decipher what's really for you and who's really in support of you. And sometimes that comes in forms that you may not think that they come in. It may not be a parent, it may be another mentor, it may be a peer. But all of those people around you who really do love you and support you will also see something in you. And if they don't always understand, it's more of, we know that you got it, we know that you're capable. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to, someone tells you no or maybe, to also have a secondary prompt for that. And maybe that's even just asking why. I'm always a kind of purveyor of life is not linear by any means, so you may yield to one direction or another, but it's more so about the journey than the destination, so don't be afraid of the journey, I guess, is the biggest thing.
I love that. You have dropped gems. So last question, how important is the Black and Latino network at Syracuse, and what would you say could work to strengthen it?
What could I say that
could strengthen it even more? So how important is it to you, the Black and Latino network among Syracuse University alums? And then how how can it be strengthened?
Right. The Syracuse is a huge campus.
Yeah.
A huge campus. Most of my closest friends that I've graduated with now were not in my program. Not even close. They graduated from Maxwell. They were athletes. They were this and they were that. So having those peers who grew up in communities and households that are more similar to yours and understand your story, it's invaluable. You can't replace that. I was in a program and a major where people had that one singular interest that they shared with me, but understanding the community aspects and understanding the cultural aspects is really probably what helped me survive. What helped me survive while I was at Syracuse. And even now, coming out and being even in an environment like this where there's so many alumni, it's just like an immediate recognition that we all have a similar story. And even if you don't speak to every single person, it feels like home. It feels like home no matter where you go. And I feel like strengthening that just means reaching out. And that could be reaching backwards, forwards, or in any direction. But I really think that means reaching out and inviting people to be a part, because there's always going to be strength in numbers. You're always going to meet someone. You're always going to be able to evolve and develop different relationships. But strengthening doesn't, I guess, always mean changing or re-envisioning, but just continuing to grow and continuing to talk to people and introducing yourself to someone you may have never met before.
I love that. Like our connection.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just been my whole life. And so I believe in that, and I'll stand on that, and I'll continue to operate within that mindset, hopefully for as long as I live.
So good. Thank you so much for just crossing the fields here and speaking into my life words of encouragement. And because you did, we made a connection, and I'm super grateful. Thank you so much for agreeing to share your story with me.
Yeah, you're more than welcome, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.